This is just to summarize. Should we start or should we wait for 5 minutes? There are 8 people. Maybe we should wait for 5 minutes, right?
Thank you.
So should we continue? I think we have 10 people. Preeti has just messaged me saying that she may not, she's has bad network. She's traveling, so she'll join later. Okay, so this is like a little summary of what we've done so far. We are looking at what qualities we must have or we must work on to be able to be good mediators. Obviously, common sense. That's needed everywhere, and it's needed in mediation also. Intelligence, to be able to understand the case, to grasp the facts, to be able to actually understand what's going on. Intelligence. But I think patience is, you just listen to people complaining for hours at end, blaming each other for hours at end, to actually go through those layers of emotion. It needs tremendous amount of patience. And that is one of those qualities. Yes, you will get the tools of how to do it, but there is that ability to be able to be present and be patient, really come from a place of compassion and empathy, and service, to be able to listen to so much. Neutrality, and we are going to have a separate session on neutrality. It's very difficult to be neutral, and it needs a shift of the mind, and it needs and particularly a neutral as in a mediator neutral. Being a neutral as a judge is slightly different from being a neutral as a mediator. So we are going to have somebody come and actually address this point in detail. One of the best things that you can do for somebody as a human being is to offer your presence, your complete presence, mental, emotional, physical, in every form. And one of the ways of that is to be truly alert to what is going on, to watch body language, to watch what is not said, to watch emotion, and to note all that. So alertness, curiosity. With all the training that we have in various professions, we have a lot of knowledge, and we tend to jump to conclusions very quickly because of that knowledge. We are taught, I can talk to you as a lawyer. I'm taught to look at certain ingredients, find solutions. Look at certain ingredients, find out what is wrong, almost have a diagnosis of the problem, and then provide a solution. So the way my mind works is I only notice the ingredients, or I used to. Curiosity is about noticing beyond that, and just being curious without really trying to go in a particular direction. Just grasping as much as possible. So when we say we listen, which is going to be again something that we're going to go into much detail, one of the main things is to listen from a space of curiosity. From a space that, okay, you said this, it could mean multiple things, but I want to know from you why you said this. We have different questions that we ask, and we have an approach as to what question to ask at what stage of literally every fact or every statement. And we do that from a space of curiosity. So you have to ask yourself every time you ask a question, why am I asking this question? So there's a lot of awareness, not just for what the person in front of you is saying, it's also about, why am I asking this question? Am I going towards a solution, or am I going towards trying to understand the other person's perspective? Empathy, of course, and we look at the meaning of empathy. That's something that we are covering again in the session, in the next session. And humility. I read an article long back on intellectual humility. And again, for us professionals, that's one of those things that we need to inculcate. And I'm speaking for myself. If you know something about a subject, you are always in a position to share knowledge about that subject with the other person. And if particularly that person doesn't come from that profession or doesn't come across as somebody who knows a lot about that subject, you tend to have a little bit of, intellectual pride in terms of what you know. But as a mediator, you are not an advisor. You are not coming in there as a subject matter expert. You are coming in there as a facilitator. So you will need to develop a sense of humility, that even if you know, and nobody is questioning that, you still need to come from a place of curiosity and humility, saying that keep aside your judgment, keep aside your knowledge, keep aside your conclusion, and ask from a place of humility, what is another's opinion. One of the things that you'll come across is when it comes to solutions. There will be solutions that will make sense to you from your space of experience, your understanding of how the world operates. But for another person, it may not make sense. Don't allow that to affect you or to hurt you or to think that they are not respecting you. They are their own people. They have their own experience. They have their own needs. Trust the fact that they're intelligent enough to choose. That requires a lot of humility. Don't go out of your way. Yes, we have methods by which we ask them questions to understand whether they have understood. It's exploration from a perspective whether they have understood or they know exactly what they're thinking and they've thought of several angles. And if you question, you will realize that they have. So you help them explore that from that point of view, but not from the point of view that they're not seeing it from your perspective. You have not lived in their shoes. You don't know what they want. So that practice of, coming from a space of humility is critical. So those are some of the qualities, and that you can say qualities, you can say mindset that you will need to inculcate to be able to practice as a mediator. Any thoughts? It's basically the same thing that we've talked about what mediation is, but these are specific qualities from an individual's perspective. The process requires some ethics, confidentiality, impartiality, integrity, neutrality, informed consent, no harm to third parties, and no conflict of interest. There is a slight difference between neutrality and impartiality. Neutrality is that you have no interest in the outcome. Impartiality, so neutrality also relates to the subject matter. You are neutral whether the case is settled or not. Impartiality is that you do not side with any one of the parties, or you don't get influenced by the objective of any one party more than the other. For you, both parties are their objectives are equal. When we say no harm to third parties, any decision that involves something that parties at the table have no authority to decide on cannot be decided in a mediation. For example, if there is a minor in the picture and the minor, the guardian of the minor is not in the meeting, and there is some property that transaction that needs to be done, without the information of the third party, who's the guardian of the minor and the minor, you can't take decisions which are harmful to the minor, not those which are beneficial. If you want to gift property to somebody, nobody's, I mean, that's your choice. But if you say that, we let us divide the property in such a way that there'll be less given to somebody else, that kind of a decision cannot be made when the interested party is not at the table. So understanding that and maintaining integrity with respect to these things is very important to build trust and to build reputation. And with that, let's go to the next stage of the mediation process. Today, I'm going to give you an introduction to what the second stage of the mediation process is. And next week, we have some special sessions on communication. And then we will share some tools with you during the period of the first 4 days. And we will conclude with exercise, just like we did last week. So communication is also known as exploration. This stage involves collecting as much information as possible. So two objectives: collecting as much information as possible for the mediator and establishing dialogue between the parties. Two primary objectives of communication at this stage. We will not try to solve the problem, get into solutions, try to look at options or proposals till we have understood the entire problem. We will be tempted to, right at the first time on the table, we'll be tempted with proposals. The idea is to go back to communication and get as much information as possible. And the objective is to have the complete picture before getting into exploration. The first goal of conversation: understanding, not agreement. Basically, what we will be doing here is conversations to explore what is the case about, what is the problem. We've got a small statement right in the beginning. So what we did is the mediator made his opening statement. After that, each party made their opening statements. The lawyers made their statements. And we are now at that place where the mediator takes the next step. Let's try and understand what the mediator's intention is. The mediator's intention is to collect as much information that as he can get, and in the process, to establish communication between the parties. Know your dispute. These are the things that we do in the stage of communication. Collect information. Employ communication tools to understand the dispute. Ask the right questions. Engage active listening skills. Read body language. Practice neutral reframing. These are some of the tools. At this stage, we may seek legal opinion or ask the parties to seek legal opinion. And as I said, establish communication between the parties. JP spoke about it yesterday. I've been speaking about it continuously, that there will be times that parties will come to the table, but they won't be making eye contact. If they speak, they will be triggered and they will go into an argument. Sometimes they will be crying. Sometimes they will be screaming. Sometimes they will show a kind of attitude that I'm come here because he has invited me. The other side has invited me and his case is weak. That's why he has called me to the table. So there'll be some amount of posturing. Expect all this to be there. There may be threats, but the fact that they are at the table, the fact that there is a mediation that's happened, that we are exploring, it's our job to get them to the next step of communication. If you have any thoughts, if you don't agree with what I'm saying, please say so. Okay? What is the purpose of communication? To express our feelings, thoughts, ideas, emotions, and desires to others. To make others understand what and how we feel or think. To derive a benefit or advantage. to express an unmet need or demand. One of the things that we do in mediation is we give people space to talk about what they're going through. For a person who is in a conflict, it's very, very difficult to hear the other side's story. It can be triggering. Sometimes it can invoke guilt. So, and yet, unless you do that and you give that space, you can't proceed to the next level of trying to reason and trying to communicate with each other. So we have to do it in such a manner that we give the space, and yet we don't allow the tension to escalate. Effective communication is the process of ideas, thoughts, opinions, knowledge, and data so that the message is received and understood with clarity and purpose. Anger, when it is there, or hurt, or even fear, distorts the message. To be able to complete the process of passing on the message, we need to be able to give parties that space to be, to complete that process. And that's what we will try. When we communicate effectively, both the sender and receiver feel satisfied. Message is received and understood by the receiver as intended by the sender. So we are looking at how to do effective communication. That's what we're going to see. So let's first see what is happening here. Communication is the process where senders' thoughts, feelings, ideas, or emotions get transformed to senders' words, gestures, acts, or expressions. Words, gestures, acts, or expressions is the message. Now, many times that messaging, because of anger, because of fear, because of one's ability to communicate, the message might be wrong. Many times the mediator needs to ask questions to get the correct message or the message that the sender is trying to send, and not escalate the problem with that. See, the reason that they have come to you is because between them that message was not going through. Every time they try to say something, and they'll keep repeating till the message goes through, but the message will go through only when the message is received. In the way that the sender thought about it, felt about it, and his idea of it by the receiver. He's not giving you the message. He's giving it to the person, the other side. But the way it is given may be problematic. And that could be the layers of emotion. Giving them that space to vent, understanding that message, and then eventually helping them communicate that message in the manner that the receiver can understand, and understand at the same level as the sender. Yes, Roshali?
How do we make that judgment whether the party has really understood it the way it is intended by the sender?
By asking questions, by completing that loop, summarizing. So those tools we will give you. Restating, summarizing, reframing, asking using silence to see what the other side's reaction is. There's body language, you will see it. You may not see it in a simulation because we are all acting, but you will definitely see it when you do it. You use these techniques within your family, you use this with your colleague, you use these techniques. These are not only conflict resolution techniques. These are methods you can use in day-to-day life. You use them and you see, you will get the messages.
Essentially, we need to start practicing this from today itself.
Yes.
In all our communications.
Yes. Yes. Message is transmitted when the receiver's understanding by assigning reasons and attributing thoughts, feelings, and ideas. It evokes receiver's responses through words, gestures, acts, or expressions. And then it is conveyed to the sender. Now, the effective communication process happens when the message that the sender wanted to give and what the message the receiver received is communicated back to the sender that it has been received. The reason we keep, cribbing or we keep nagging, many times in a conflict, you keep nagging, is because we don't feel understood and that our message has actually reached on the other side. Unless, of course, somebody has a, has a psychological issue. A very healthy, normal person will keep nagging till the other person receives the message, acknowledges, and receives it in the manner it's conveyed. Very important. I'm sorry, I don't know what is going on. Okay. So, any thoughts on that? Has there been effective communication here?
Absolutely, yes. The very intent of maintaining the privacy is breached in this.
Yes. I mean, you have actually disclosed what the problem is. Name is not, I mean, understand that it's not the name that's confidential. It's the, it's what the person is going through. And you lose, if you don't understand the reason behind something, the purpose behind something, it's no point following processes and things just for the sake of it. This is a typical example. Of course, it's a joke, but such things can happen.
Yeah, indeed, it talks a lot. I mean, many a times we follow certain things only because that's required to do without trying to understand the idea behind it.
Yes. When communication happens effectively, it improves social, emotional, and mental health. Deeper existing connections, it deepens the connections. Trust and transparency is built in all relationships. There'll be trust in the mediator developing because of that. And there'll also be trust between the people who are communicating with each other. There's better problem solving skills and conflict resolution skills. So the primary thing first for us to know is whether we are actually effectively communicating the message or not. And whether we, first of all, are understanding the message that the party is giving us, and then whether in the same manner it is going to the other side and the whole circle is complete or not. What do you think about this?
When we say we agree, all three of them are agreeing. All three of them are agreeing on different aspects.
So do you think they have agreed?
They haven't, indeed. There's no agreement at all.
See, they all
they have to agree the same thing in
On the contrary,
same
there is a
sense.
confusion there. You know, they have thought that they have agreed, but they have not really agreed.
yes, because if you see, yes, Mrinalini.
No,
No,
I was just I was just gonna say that this seems like a picture where they intend to tell we agree to disagree, because it seems like they're not actually agreeing, but they're like all different and they just tell that, oh yeah, I agree to whatever you're saying, but like not really.
Yes. And if you notice the colors, each one is seeing things in the way they see. I mean, it's their color. So it's colored by their own perception. So the yellow one is looking at yellow. So it's colored by their perception of the world. And the shapes also are different. But they feel they have agreed. And this is very common. It may look very funny here, but it's common because we don't go into the details. And so many times, and I'll tell you just one of these examples. So there was this case where, yes, Dr. Rai.
They could be a part which they are supposed to do in the entire conclusion, which they might be agreeing to.
Yes, but in this case, whatever it is, even if it is a part that you need to do, each one needs to know their part, but the other also needs to know that the other is doing that part. So they should have had in that case all three: yellow, blue, and red, your square, triangle, and your circle. All three should have had. So they would have known each one's role.
No, I'm saying they are agreeing to the part that they are supposed to play.
Even if they are supposed to play, if they're telling the other person needs to know that this person is going to play this part. Here, it looks like they are seeing it from their point of view. The shapes are different. And one is saying it's a square, one is saying it's a circle, one is saying it's a triangle. In fact, we do, when we have a physical session, we do an exercise here. And it's very interesting that you tell your partner, you play it in pairs, and you tell your partner to draw something that you are seeing on the wall. Just tell. So it's about speaking and on a piece of paper, and you tell them, where to draw it, the top left corner, draw a circle, draw
Damshara.
this, draw that. So it's basically a description of a picture which you share with the person and the person draws it. But what you are seeing and what is drawn is so different because it's very difficult to perceive like that. But then when people know how to communicate, so you do it twice, the same exercise, and you realize that where are the points that you are missing in the communication. The second time you do it, it's almost accurate. It's another picture that you're watching. So you change the picture again. It's the same team, same person giving the message, same person receiving the message, but the picture changes in terms of how the picture actually comes out because you learn how to communicate. That's online for us it's difficult unless we put you all in breakout rooms and things. And it takes too much time for an exercise like this. But how you communicate in terms of the detailing is very important, and it's the mediator's job to notice where that gap is. The reason that the message is not going through is because there is a gap. I'll give you an example. There was this case which we were doing for a child custody, co-parenting agreement. It was not child custody, it was co-parenting. And the wife and husband would fight every single day on the minutest of issues, like literally tearing each other apart. But they were not able to figure what was wrong. They both wanted to co-parent. They both were completely dedicated to the task. They just didn't know. When we went through the sessions, it took a lot of time to understand exactly what the problem is. So when we found, like when I saw it, I realized that what was missing is them taking joint decisions for the child. What they were doing is each deciding what is good for the child, but not discussing with each other. So the messaging was missing. The child would call one of the parents and say that today I'm not going to school. Both of them are outside and live separately. The first one he would call would say no. Then he would call the second one and explain something, give some explanation. And that one would say yes. And then he would call the first one and say, now, so the other spouse has said yes, so I'm not going to school. There would be a big fight. So there was a missing link there, that if the second spouse before committing or the first spouse after committing, whatever was the decision, communicate that to the child. When the child calls, you stick to that decision as parents. So the child cannot manipulate the parents because they are not speaking to each other. And it's smoother to exist, the whole arrangement works beautifully. They did just this much for the next 2 weeks. And it's the smoothest agreement. They've said they've not had so much peace in their relationship for so long. It was just filling that gap in between. And both of them wanted it, just couldn't figure what was going wrong. It came to, you don't respect me, you want to, you basically want to, veto every decision I make, you don't listen to me, all kinds of things. But actually it was a problem that when the call came, he didn't know or she didn't know. So they would take a decision depending on the explanation. Does that make sense? So those, when you notice and you really listen what the problem is, you can kind of give them a link as to, I feel this is missing. Think about it. And actually it comes out in the conversation, and you just then say, how about, if we try this? But to do that, it's important, like it took us a few sessions to understand what's going on and why the fights were happening. Ineffective communication, any disruption or failure in the process of communication can create ineffective communication. So what I explained to you just now was an example. It could be, of course, there are a lot more. We'll get to that. What are the causes? Perception, bias, prejudice, misinterpretation, distortion of the message, language and expressions, poor listening abilities, lack of patience, third party or intermediary, and the environment. All of these can cause ineffective communication. So we need to understand which one of these it is and how to bridge that gap so that they can start communicating. Because end of it, we want to establish communication between the parties. They will find their own solution with your support. But to diffuse that tension, this needs to be done. What are the types of communication? There's verbal, there's written, non-verbal, visual. We all know what is verbal communication. When we speak to each other, and actually in mediation, that's going to be your primary mode of communication, verbal and non-verbal. But in the age of digital technology, there's a lot of visual communications that happen also. Graphics. Sometimes you send many times you'll have people getting really angry about WhatsApp forwards. You don't know what message was intended and what message was taken. So that is visual. There is written, of course. Sometimes by the time they reach, the case reaches you, there's a lot of notices and emails and things like that that have gone through. And there's non-verbal, which is your body language. It's, when somebody's speaking, you're looking in another side and ignoring, can be very annoying. And that can be triggering for the parties. For the other party. So all of that, and we are again going to look at each of these a little bit more in detail. I'm just introducing the subject today. So apparently, a message transmitted through spoken communication, in fact, only 7% is the actual words that we speak. Attitude or demeanor is 38%. Body language is 55%. So I don't know if you all have you all remember that ad there was don't remember her name, Pan Pasand or Pan Parag or something, Pan Pasand I think it was, where that lady said Shadi or tumse kabhi nahi, and she said it in various expressions. Do you all remember? It was a Marathi actress. That's basically that. The words remained the same, but the expressions and the body language changed every time. And the message that was given was completely different in every scene. So that is what we need to remember, that it's communication is an entire package, not just how we pass on a message through our own presence in the situation, but how we receive it, and whether we can see the message in a way that can be translated to show what is actually being said, or what is the sender's intention. So this is a more simplified variant of the first diagram that we had looked at. There's coding that happens of what we want to say, transmission, and decoding. A mistake or use of a code that doesn't directly give the message will distort the message. The environment through which we or the mode through which we send the message, if there is a disturbance there, it will distort the message. And the decoding will also distort the message. Our job is to find out where the message is getting distorted, or whether it is, and then see how we can correct that. And these relate to things like respect, ego. Many times this word ego is so misunderstood that you may want to say something, but it's interpreted as ego, as anger, as something else, because you are not able to codify your message in the manner that the other person can decodify in a way that it can be understood. It's your job to do that. It's the same thing in a different way. Sender, message, encoding through a channel towards the receiver, decoding. After the decoding, the response from the sender is the feedback. I'm going to play a video, and I want your thoughts on that. Can you hear
It's
it?
just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me, and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless. And I don't know if it's gonna stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever gonna stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
Yeah, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
it's just sometimes it's like there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
That sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. If you would just.
Don't.
Try to see things my way. Do I have to keep?
I want your thoughts on this video. If you want to watch it again, just tell me.
There's one party which is trying to point out the exact reason for the problem, but the other party feels that the actual problem is not being addressed. You're trying to go tangent or speak about something else. And then a point comes when the party realizes that actually that person was probably speaking about the problem itself, but the perception was totally different, or the communication, I mean, the message was not understood.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, Mrinalini?
Yeah, much like what Dr. Subodh had also mentioned. So I think that the lady wanted more of empathy and more of understanding of what she was going through. And initially, the man did not like present it in a way where he understood. I think the way his face was, his facial expressions were, and the way he was pointing out to the nail was intending towards him giving a solution, and also towards like not understanding what she was trying to say, rather looking at a different aspect. And like Dr. Subodh had said, I think later on he realized that he just had to acknowledge the fact that she was going through things, and he just had to be there for her. And again, when I think it just boils down to what the other party wants to listen to and what the other party wants, rather than fixing something, and in terms of how they perceive the particular situation and the particular issue that they're facing.
Okay. Thank you, Mrinalini. Yes, Roshali?
I have a little different thought here. So yes, the whatever Dr. Shirur and Mrinalini has spoken is a fact. But then if you look at the end of it, when he says that he understands it, but when okay, I'll listen. You tell me. His body language is like, okay, whatever she says, let me just hear it out. There's no heart in it, and he just simply hears it, and he simply gives a reaction as if he has understood. But when it and the very last ending of it, which is, see, look, I told you there is a screw, which means he never understood it. He always had that screw at the back of his mind, and whatever was being conveyed as I have understood was just a superficial communication.
Nice, very nice observation. Anyone else? This is there are many layers to this, and I want to tell you that this is one of those videos that I identify with as a mediator. So I want you all to go a little more deeper. I know it looks funny and it looks like but there's a lot to it. So I want to know if you have more reactions. Yes, Mrinalini.
I'm sorry, I'm like
Please go ahead.
conveying it again. Yeah. So I think it also comes down to the willingness of the parties to actually resolve the issue. Because just like what Sharima had also mentioned about, the fact that the guy just understood, and he just played along to what the lady wanted. The lady never wants to actually resolve the conflict. She once, when they were gonna like kiss, she realized that it was a screw that was probably the issue, but she's not ready to accept the fact, and she doesn't really want to resolve that. She she talks about everything else which might be related to that screw, but not really that screw, because she's not yet ready to accept that fact, perhaps. So she's not willing to look beyond to resolve the conflict.
That's interesting. Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello.
Yes, yes, Dr. Ketke.
Yes. For an outsider or for other person, the solution may be very obvious. But for the person who is going through that problem, to come to the understanding of the problem and the solution and actually acting on it, it takes a long time and it's a big process. And the other person is, has to have a very great patience to let the person go through all that procedure and then come to the solution on their own.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Any more thoughts? Thank you, Dr. Ketke. No more thoughts? So when you have a mediation, solutions will be appearing to you just like that nail on the forehead. There'll be a problem and there'll be a solution. But you will be so frustrated to know that those solutions that you offer will never be taken. And in fact, you will reach an impasse. This is a fact of the matter. In fact, parties will not even be willing to listen to a solution. They'll just keep on going round and round in circles, and you will become one of them. With you going and pointing to the nail, and they going and saying it's not the nail. This will happen with the mediator and the party if the mediator focuses on the nail. All of you were right.
The last sentence, what you said, it is the mediators.
It is the mediators.
What or what you words you use? Get it.
So I said that if the mediator focuses in real life, this is exactly what happens in the mediation. When you come to a mediation, the mediator will see the solution and the problem just like you see the nail in this video. The person is seeing the nail, you will see it. When you give the solution, just like this lady is rejecting that solution, the party will reject that solution. Because as a third party, it's easy for you to see it. But for the party who is in it, it's hard. Now, of course, there are layers to it that it may not be the solution. I had very interesting feedback from some participants who said, how does he know that it is the nail? It's possible she's taken off the nail, it's hurting her more, so she's put it back. Or maybe the nail was put to avoid the headache or whatever it is. Or something or the other like that. How does he know without really exploring further in terms of what it is? How does she feel? What is it? Since when has that nail been there? Why is the nail there? All of that. There's no exploring. And just like Rushali noticed, there is this thing, okay, bol do, khatam kar do. I think it's a hard thing that you are going through. That is not effective communication. That is also not really listening. That is just, okay, you say, I listen, fine. Real listening would be an act of engagement. which we will look at, of course. But here, it's a failure on the part of the person who's listening. And this is typically what would happen in a mediation. Yes, Dr. Rai?
Yeah, are we supposed to point out at the nail?
No, you're
right?
not. You're not.
So we just allow themselves, those two people, to discuss and come to a conclusion. So when there is a solution, do we even direct them towards that?
We explore it. And when I say explore it, you have to, okay, so this is where the whole curiosity and solution thing comes up. And that is why we divide the process in stages. When you are at this stage, you explore with the idea of understanding and looking at various aspects, and not right in the beginning that nail will stare at you. You will think it's a solution. You will be attracted to look at it, look at only the nail, and keep going into the nail. You know how to remove the nail. The nail is causing the headache. So the sweaters are snagged because of the nail. So your head will keep revolving around because you see that as a solution. With time, you have to become curious, and your job is to look broader and look at her feelings, where the pain is, what time of the day the pain is, like a doctor would diagnose from various angles. You just don't jump like hum log non-doctors will Google something, Google a symptom and say that this is it. But if you go to a doctor, the doctor will tell you to do blood tests. He'll ask you several questions because he knows the matter much. He looks at it very differently. So his approach will be very broad. He will really explore it and just not jump to a conclusion unless it's quite an obvious symptom. As a mediator, we do the same thing. We explore it from all sides. Okay. So when you're saying, are we supposed to point it out? Don't do it at this stage. There's a time to do it a little later. Okay, so I'll tell you also the difference between the stages. When you know how you. So the first stage, we have very clear, it's opening statement, both parties introduce and go ahead. Second stage is communication. When you are in the communication stage, you have to get all the information and you have to establish communication between parties. If you find, and there will be certain cues that you will have between the body language of the participants, the way they speak to each other, eye contact, which will be there when they first come. There will be at a certain time a shift in that. The body language, the words they use, how they talk to each other. And from talking through you, they will talk to each other. That's the time you go to the next step. Even at the next step, you don't focus on one solution. You ask both the parties to keep giving their solutions. In your head, you note it down. You make a note and you keep it aside. But if you run after that, in all probability, you will reach impasse. Because that's where your intellectual humility comes, that if the parties have reached this stage and they're needing a third party to intervene, they must have tried all the things that, that were obvious to reach here. If it was so easy, they would have found it themselves. They have reached here because it's not so easy.
True.
If you keep that in your mind, all those obvious solutions that will pop up, you write them down, keep it aside, but keep exploring. It may look very silly, but it is not silly. We take a long time, in fact, 2-3 sessions in exploring, and parties say, iska solution kya hai? Iska solution kya hai? You have to stop yourself from going there. And I'm going to say this with a caveat. This is in most matters, but there are some matters which are purely one transaction. then this does not apply. Then you go directly into the facts, and of course you may find a solution. For example, you have taken a bank loan. It's a very clear process that is defined, and you have to pay the amount. Max to max, you have a scope to bargain in terms of payment and non. So that's all you have. Then don't break your head in trying to find out why you missed an installment, because a bank really doesn't care. So if you understand that, you know which matter to go into details and not, because if that fact is just not relevant to the dispute, and also the fact that the relationship of the parties, it's one transaction and over. Bank is not going to keep track as to, hamara rishta kaisa hai, we are friends, not friends. They are extremely transactional. Then you become transactional as far as the mediation is also concerned. But the kind of cases that we are thinking about, which will come up, are generally which involve a lot of emotion and will need to be explored far more deeper. Yes, so this is important. So I'm just going to wait for more thoughts, more comments to come up. No thoughts?
So you meant to say that if any obvious solution comes up, and then we'll have to think that why this was not adopted earlier. So there must be something more to it, and then explore accordingly.
Yes, absolutely right. Absolutely right.
So in this case, how should this person have dealt with the situation?
This person should have actually explored what is going on with her. And like Rushali said, with a little more empathy. Did you feel that he had empathy when he heard her?
No.
It was basically just, okay, tell me, Anna, I feel, oh, it's hard, it sounds hard. That's it.
Yeah.
So the idea is to stay with her, offer her your presence, and ask her, what is the nail doing? I mean, not even the nail. And she doesn't talk about the nail. He talks about the nail. So just stay with her and say, what is hurting? Where is it hurting? From when is it hurting? What do you mean you have a headache? What else what else is going on with you?
Not to point at the nail at all.
Not to point at the nail. But what he does right in the beginning, because and the solutions will pop at you. They will pop. I'm telling you. And it's very hard to not look at them. The only thing we are saying is have patience till you know everything. Until the parties have felt hurt. Let the parties feel heard. Let the parties complete saying what they are saying. And show them that empathy. Now, there's another angle in mediation that they don't want empathy from you only. It's nice because that builds trust and rapport, but they also want to be understood by the person they are in conflict with. So that is another angle that we need to cover. Yes, Rushali.
So when we explore and ask questions, and as you said, the solutions will keep popping. Can we ask question around that solution?
Yes, you can keep
like why was something like this anytime tried? What was the result? Or why did you think it failed? Something like that.
See, here what has happened is that he says, see, there's a nail in your head. I'm guessing that if you remove the nail, that's the problem. He says something to that effect. When it pops in your head, okay, so there's a little thing that you need to understand. When you are listening to a person and a narration of a person, follow the track the person is taking. She didn't speak about the nail. She spoke about her headache. She spoke about her sweater snagging. She spoke about not being able to sleep. He spoke about the nail. If he had asked her, why are your sweaters snagged? Why do you think they are? Maybe she would have spoken about the nail. And then you could have asked about the nail. When you're talking about the nail, without her bringing up the nail, you are taking the direction of the communication in a different way. The speaker has to be in charge of the communication, of the narrative. You follow their narrative. That is what we do in communication. That is how we listen. So let the story be of the person who's speaking. You ask questions about the point that they have brought up. You don't bring up another point. I am in debt. I have so many creditors behind me. I don't know what to do. What should I do? Don't ask them, do you want to sell your house? Ask them, who are these people? Why have, tell me more about it. Why did you need this money? Stick to the point that they are there. So they feel that you are understanding. There is building of trust, and also you get the bigger picture. What is our obvious thing when they say, what should I do? I have so much debt. You will say, okay, what are your assets? That's the obvious response that we will have, because we want to solve a problem. But the idea is to first understand what that debt is. When I give you examples, I oversimplify them, but it's just to give you a direction. So, of course, this example, this particular video is also oversimplified and hypothetical, but it's just giving you a direction in terms of how the communication needs to go. And when we do our role play, we'll see it in a way that you'll see practically how that works. So this skill of staying with the person, listening to the person from a step-to-step basis is important. So some of you asked the question about, should we ask, should we explore the solution or not? There's no harm in exploring a solution, just that it shouldn't be yours. It should come from them. So when they talk about it, at some point they themselves will come to the nail. And that's the time you explore the nail. Not before they've spoken about their problem. Does that make sense?
So in this video, if she would have asked him for a solution, what ideally should he have done?
As a mediator, he would have asked her,
Then should he point to the nail or not?
No, he shouldn't. Then, because even then he shouldn't. He should ask her, what kind of a solution are you looking for? What is the relief that you're looking for? What are my options? What are the options out of which a solution is available? Because our job is to get the options from them. then analyze each of the options, and then to come to the solution. So you have to, when they ask you, they will keep asking you, Dr. Sunu. They'll keep asking you questions, and they will ask you on day one. In fact, the way they will start the proposal is they'll give you a briefing, and they'll say this is the only solution available. You know, so this is my case, and we propose that this is the way to solve it. Pay me 1 crore and finish it off. No other way. We are not interested in any other talks. That is the approach that they are going to come with. For that, you have to go back and say, tell me what happened. Let's understand what happened. Eventually, it will be a lot of emotion. It will be a lot of facts, everything. A maze which you will need to keep exploring to come to the whole and complete story. And then you will realize some part of it is a problem. A lot of it is how it's been interpreted. Then diffuse the part that's interpreted, diffuse the emotion, come to the crux of it. Then try to find the solution. If you get into solution, they will have their solutions ready. One party will say something, one party will say something. Typical. That's when you will reach an impasse. There's somebody who's put on a chat. Follow the narrative of the speaker to understand the conflict deeper. That's like a poetry.
No, ma'am, I just put down whatever you had mentioned. Yeah.
But it did rhyme, right?
So yesterday, it was mentioned that there are some 3 layers, right? First is
Yes, that Jimmy
emotion.
mentioned. First was emotions. Second was, anybody's written it down? Nalini, have you written it down?
I have only 2 of them written down. Actually, I missed the 3rd layer. I think it was
Yeah.
emotion, substance, and Sir had mentioned something else. I tried to search it over Google, but I couldn't.
So
So
that was his own
yeah,
his thing. So even
yeah.
I had written it, but I didn't carry the book. So it was very
I will
interesting.
probably look at the recording and I'll send it over the WhatsApp group chat if
Yes.
that works.
But that was very nice in terms of what he said.
It's just
So verbal communications is the transmission of emotions, thoughts, and information through the use of sounds and words. Where we reveal, we listen, and how much we understand depends on how much we reveal and also how much we listen. So as a mediator, we don't have anything much to reveal. And therefore, most of our communication is about listening. Another thing about that video is the fact that many times we feel that mediation is about giving people solution. About, I'll tell them that, be nice to each other, talk nicely, this, let's do this. But, at least it's my experience, and I'm sure that all of you would have had this experience. When somebody is really angry or agitated or hurt about something, they are in no mood to take your advice. They want to do what they want to do. And therefore, it is better that we listen rather than advise. Just like this lady in the video, That's exactly the attitude that all of us hold when we are in the midst of trouble. Okay, so we're going to watch another video.
Natasha, you're getting married. Amazing news, isn't it, Vish?
Yeah, but very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it's the best thing that could have happened. I mean, marriage is like so much fun, isn't it?
बहुत अच्छा है.
You know, and you can like
Enjoy.
be together all day and like do all your errands together, and you know, it's just like best friends all the time together in each other's space. It's so fun.
Exciting है. You will enjoy. You will have a lot of things to do.
Yeah, and you know when you go on a holiday and you don't have to depend on if you have a group of friends and two of y'all can go out and walk on the seaside, and you know it's so much fun, dinners and
बहुत मजा आता है.
no, yeah, it's great fun. It's the best thing that could have happened to you. I mean, it's just like all day together. It's great.
Yeah, what togetherness बहुत है.
What do you mean togetherness both?
नहीं, it's good fun to you're getting married. You know, all the best to you.
Yeah.
And बहुत ही exciting है. And तेरे को बहुत ही चेंज लगेगा लाइफ में. इससे ज्यादा अच्छा चीज हुआ नहीं मेरे को देख. मैं इतना खुश हूँ. And you know, I'm very, very excited and very, very happy for you and Natasha.
Congratulations.
What's happening there?
The words are not matching with
Emotions,
the
yeah.
emotion.
So even if you say the words, this is verbal communication, but there's something called paraverbal, where your body language,
Body
your
language.
facial expression shows what it's quite obvious that that's not what you mean. And that is what we have to read. So someone particularly when there is this thing that there's a proposal given by the other side, and this the one who's being offered the proposal will be like, yes, I agree, and but it's very obvious from their body language that they are not going to sign the papers. They're just buying time, or they're just saying it at that point of time because they are caught in that thing. Later they may not even attend the sessions. Read that body language. Take a private session, explore why they have a problem. Don't believe their words. If you can read that there's something wrong, explore it. It's the same thing with what happened in the first video. Not only is the listening part a problem when your body language and your words are not in sync, the revealing also is. So in this case, he is saying he's confirming something, but is definitely not, doesn't look like he's in an agreement with what the lady is saying. You will see this very often also.
So this video was mainly to show the body language.
This video was mainly to show the body language, and something went wrong, Dr. Sunu?
No.
So this was mainly to show the body language and the fact that we need to be aware that when we are listening, we are not just listening to the words. We are also looking at everything else. I'll tell you a little experience that I had years ago. There was this mediation which was between what was told to me was it was a commercial mediation. When it came to me, it came through the court, and it was told to me that it's a commercial mediation relating to encroachment of property. There was land encroachment. So it was an in-person mediation. I went for it. I was in fact in Pune at that point of time, and the matter was in Goa. So I went for the matter, to Goa, and the parties came, and one of the parties came late, like really late, and the party that came late came like really badly dressed, you know, shirt was not ironed, came alone, he was wearing chappals, and looked like completely disinterested. So when he came in, I, without, paying attention to all that, I just conducted my opening statement and all of that. And I also asked him for his opening statement. He did not come. He came with a lawyer who was very junior. Was not his counsel. It was somebody else. And when I asked for his opening statement, he said, "See, I've come because they called me, and the court told me to come here. But obviously, they have filed the case because they have a weak case. And they've asked for mediation because they have a weak case. I'm not interested in settling. I want them out of the land." So it was his land. There was an encroachment by a builder in that land, and he was not interested in settling it for money or anything. So there was an offer of some crores for that small strip of literally a meter of land, and but he was not interested. He said, "No, I am not interested. I am interested in taking the matter forward, and I want these people out of the land." The other side story was that they had got their FAR sanctioned. I mean, the plan sanctioned basis this area. So if at all this land was removed from, I mean, basically not reflecting in their agreement, in their plans, their entire plans that were approved by the authorities would have to do it again. And they had already invested crores in constructing a very large part of the building. So they were desperate to settle at whatever cost, because otherwise the losses they were facing, they had already taken money from people who had invested in that property. So it was, for them, it was critical, and they were in a hurry. So they were completely invested in the process, and he was not interested. He was not even willing to talk about money. He said, "I'm not interested in money. I just want him out of my property." And the thing I noticed about him was the clothes. Like, what is this? Why have you come so shabby? Of course, he was not a very educated person. He was he used to have this van that would run for school children as a school bus. So he was doing that. But still, I found it to be a little strange, because when you go to court, you would really, and it was in court, it was a court annex mediation. So it was in the court premises. So I found it strange. So I had a private session with him. And he revealed to me that this builder and he are actually brothers. Brothers in a sense, are related, and both of them have inherited the property from the same ancestor. But over the generations, the parties basically, have drifted apart, and one has remained poor and the other has grown very rich because of whatever. His issue was not with that. His issue was the fact that they did not acknowledge him as family. That piece of land was not the dispute. When I heard him and I told him, do you want to really, spend your time in court, because you will spend a lot of money? He said, "I don't care." I figured, he didn't tell me in so many words, but from that whole conversation, I figured that what he was looking for was acknowledgement, respect, connection with the family, because they were very big in terms of reputation in society. He had little children. He wanted to be known as somebody from that family. He had not earned that respect. in society, and he wanted that. So what he really wanted in terms of that case was that, and he thought this was a way to show them that he had power and that they needed to come and talk to him. And so I had this long session with him, and I told him that, I understand that you have been wronged. Your family has been wronged, and perhaps this is also part of that, wrong. But by not talking about it, you will only trouble your children, because this matter will go on. You already don't have money. You will spend money in the court. So I asked him, I didn't tell him in so many words as much as I asked him, so what do you do? What do you, how do you manage the home? How many children do you have? What are your plans for their future? What does your wife do? Just questions and questions and questions. And eventually, what it appeared to me is that he was really not having money. Only through communication, not exploring a solution. Because frankly, till you know the real problem. Now, anyone who would see those case papers, the problem was encroachment. And you would keep running in circles on that encroachment, will never come to the point if you went to court, if you really tried to find a solution in that. But actually, when I explored the problem, what was troubling him, the troubling was very different. That happened. He went home and I said, let's meet again. So we met after 15 days or a month or something. What does he do? He comes with his best shirt, all ironed, white, whatever, shoes. He brings his wife with her best dress. I mean, it was that dress she would wear to church, perhaps. And really invested. You know how people are when they're invested? They take trouble to dress up, to really be present on time. He was there on time, and he was there to participate. Of course, there was other strategy that was taken, for that respect element to come in. And we settled it in the third session at the same price that was at the table from the beginning. Because if you know the problem, they find their own solution. The problem is when a conflict occurs, parties are not in a position to know what the problem. What you'll say, he is jealous. We'll judge. He is jealous. He's stubborn. He has ego. We'll just have a lot of judgment. We won't go to the crux of it and find out why. When you know the why, the solutions, they find out. So that is what body language can do to you. And and that is one of the shifts that I was talking about. You will see the shift when you can go to the next stage. It can be in the clothes they wear. It can be the way they comb their hair, the way, anything. The eye contact, a smile, how they sit. It could be anything, but you will see that shift. Wait for that shift until you see the shift explode.
But not every time there would be a background story, right?
No, of course not. But at the same time, every time there will be more. That more could be a story, that more could be more facts, that more could be more I mean, we are not getting into interests, and there are a lot of things that we are going to still look at. I'm only giving you an overview of what communication is and why it's important. The tools we are looking at next week. So there are a lot of things that we will look at, but this is a broad understanding of why, the why of communication, and the why of not rushing into something. Any thoughts?
Madam, such examples help us to understand better, otherwise it becomes
Yeah.
very difficult to, it becomes our story, what you are communicating, we are thinking it is circle,
Yes.
it is round,
Yes.
or it is a square.
Yes.
That is our problem,
So when that happens, ask me and I'll give you a story. So when a question comes, I know that, okay, this is not gone through properly, so I can give a story. So that's, I can always connect the dots. That
Story help us to visualize better.
yes.
Right.
So your paraverbal is tone, pitch, pacing of voice. These are little cues that you will find that when you are sarcastic, you will say it in a different way. You say it out of concern, you will say the same thing in a different way. To catch that tone, it's important. Like yesterday, all of you, your tone for the opening statement was on point. It was calm. It was paced out very beautifully. It made the person who was listening feel, okay, everything is fine. This is a good place. So that is the setting the tone for communication. I want you all to ask me any thoughts you have, any questions that you'd like to know, because next week we have 2 sessions by an expert to begin with. And then we will have some, which will introduce you to some tools and examples, of course, because she's coming with a background in communication. And then we will have additional tools that will be introduced depending on what has been covered and what is not. And then after that we will have a role play. So that's the thing. And we'll also look at legal aspects of mediation next week. So that's the thing that we are covering next week. And we'll finish communication, and then in the last week we are getting into negotiation and settlement, because that by that part, if you have done this portion well, that part is it'll happen on its own. So the most challenging is the first 2, to actually build a trust and to actually understand the case.
So do you go prepared for every mediation? Like, if you know the topic, do you read up about the topic, or because there are different verticals that you're covering, right?
Yes.
I mean, this was real estate, and then there would be something else, and
So generally there are lawyers on board, and I have been a practicing lawyer for, by the time I went into mediation, I was already 15 years into, I've practiced in the High Court and I did corporate law. So I came with a substantial amount of experience in both family, in land matters, and in corporate. So I don't really need to, that little bit of understanding was already there. But some things what I do if I get an opportunity to is to read the papers of the case. just to understand who is coming in, what is the background, what is the amounts involved, those kind of things.
Do you get them upfront?
Court cases you do, because they send you the file. The file comes to you, so you have the file and you get information. Then you may read up a little bit about the law just for yourself, so that you do. Like, for example, if it involves a family case, there will be the entire story. The only thing that you should be able to do is not believe the story.
Not
Not believe,
Why?
because that is see, it'll be two sides, which will be a lot of narrative. Don't completely accept it, because if you do, you will get a bias. You read it from a perspective of what questions should I ask to explore this, to understand this better, not to challenge it. So we acknowledge it as the narrative of the individual who's saying it, not as a lie. We believe it from the perspective of their narrative, but narrative depends on individual's experience, not the ultimate truth or the fact. There's a big difference.
like some example or something, I say that I had been so and so or something, or she says something. Mostly families of husband, wife, or brothers also, or anything.
Yes, brothers also, husband,
Father and son also.
father and son also,
In-laws.
in-laws. Okay.
Many time in hospitals, patients usually
Patient.
complain on hospital, so they are considered victim most time.
Yes. So everyone will look at the story from their, and particularly when it comes to court, it will be presented in a certain manner. It will be presented in a manner to, first of all, meet the ingredients of what you want to say. That if somebody is negligent, you will fulfill the ingredients that lead up to negligence in your write-up, in your suit, or your complaint. You need to understand what actually happened, not just to understand whether it really happened, whether somebody is guilty or not, but to understand what that person's narrative is in terms of how that person felt, and because of which there is a narrative like that. The doctor didn't speak to me properly. He did not counsel me. His junior did it. So what did you feel? That he's not interested in your case? Is that why, could that be a factor that your narrative is that he doesn't care? Yes, Mrinalini?
Ma'am, just adding on to the doubts in what you'd answered. So when we look at the court files that are sent, generally it's more of legal drafting, right? So generally there's like a written statement and then there's a plaint that's submitted. So when we look at such court files and the narratives that are sent, so we would I'm assuming that we would cull out certain narratives that could possibly be of that person, and then when they give their opening statement, we ask questions as to what what the narratives that we imagined that the person could have had, and what we sort of decipher from the opening statement and choose our questions based on that particular line of narrative that could be what the person is feeling.
Yeah, I would say just go read the thing to get an idea of what it will be. So this is my process. I'm just sharing my process. Everyone can have a process that works for them, but understand what is the role. The role is to be curious and to go there with the understanding that let me know as much as possible. Okay, if that's the thing, what I do is I look at the papers. If I know nothing about certain clauses certain things about the law, I read up that law. So I know when they're talking about a law, what they're talking about. So that's one thing I do. When it comes to the facts, I don't pay too much attention to the written word, because that is written by a lawyer. That's not written by the party. In the mediation, I will focus on what the party says and go back to the narrative. In the sense, go with the flow of the party statement. Not if you go into the whole suit and then ask questions as per the suit, you will lose the narrative of the party. You will get engaged with the narrative of the lawyer. Instead of that, ask the lawyer, I've seen the file. Can I have the party tell me what happened? And as the party speaks one sentence, explore that. So you are then following that narrative rather than what has been fed into you through the suit. That is great for a judge.
Right.
Because
So-
the judge is looking at it from a legal perspective from both sides. Fantastic. You want to understand the entire story, let the party tell the story.
Okay. So we just use the court file moreover as filling the gaps in terms of our knowledge if we're not aware of a certain law, or if we're not fully equipped with that particular subject matter, rather than going with the facts or the narrative per se based on the.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So, but sometimes the mediation comes before the court case, no? Means when it comes. It comes through the.
If it is coming before, so even if it comes before, so if it's a pre-litigation mediation, there'll be a small note that will tell you what it is.
And court decides to send it to mediation, or the parties, once it is in the court also take a decision to send it for a mediation, or the parties take the
So
decision,
there
or
is
both.
something, this also we will cover in the legal part. There is something called section 89 under the civil procedure code, where the court, if it finds that there is some settlement possible, they can send it to mediation during the process of the case.
Means after the pleadings are complete, or how it is?
Any time during the case, even right at the end, after the pleadings are complete, even after evidence is collected, or right in the beginning, when the judge feels that there is an element of settlement, it can be sent to mediation. Therefore, earlier when mediations used to happen before the Commercial Courts Act, they were all happening during the process of the mediation, during the court case. Because the judge feels at some point, now there's a possibility of settlement, let me send it.
Madam, one more question. This Mediation Act has come, which is now notified. So whether in our curriculum that will also be covered, or
Yes, we are doing it next week. That's the legalities.
next week that will be covered.
Yes, that will be covered. Even this, what I'm talking about, section 89 and all that, for you all to understand what documentation is needed for mediation, and what is mediation under the law, and Mediation Act, all of that, and also how to find work as mediators.
That is most important.
Yes. So a little bit of that we'll cover with, we'll have an expert on board who will talk about it.
So you're saying that next week we will cover what documents are submitted to the mediator, or
no,
well,
what documents are necessary for a mediation, a agreement to mediate, just like you have an agreement to arbitrate, you have an agreement to mediate, or a arbitration or a mediation clause in your agreement, an ADR clause. So all that we will cover that next week.
So typically, what comes to the mediator? Is there an application made with a set of?
Depends on what kind of mediation it is. So you have private mediation, which is ad hoc, or which is now going to come under the Mediation Act, or you have court annexed mediation that comes through the court, either under Civil Procedure Code or through or under the Mediation Act or under the Commercial Courts Act, whatever it comes under, so that, or under each of the statutes. Now, Consumer Act will have its own mediation.
Legal
all of-
services.
Yes, legal service, whatever, whichever act is coming under, SEBI will have its own provision, so that will come. So wherever it comes under, then each of that will have their own way of referring it to you. But from whichever side it comes, you will generally have some basic idea of at least what it is. But that idea may not be accurate. Be aware of that.
So even if it is a court annexed mediation,
You
you are
will
saying
get a
that
little note or something which says what it is about.
so the entire set of documents are not forwarded.
No, not entire set. I mean, the parties came with their own files. They give you, if you ask them, the annexures and all that. But you get just a note, or sometimes you get the suit copy.
So if it's a private mediation where they have directly approached you,
So there I generally ask them to give me a note, not in family matters. Family, you start off without any documentation. Meaning you have a agreement with them and you start with the documentation, because you don't tell them to write their things, because sometimes that aggravates the conflict. Try not to do that. Just talk to them, because that's easier for people.
So
When you
it's-
write it down, it's an allegation, the other person sees it. That is how you escalate conflicts in court, because you make allegations. Some of them are true, some of them are false. They can be very triggering. So in family matters, I don't ask for written. In this thing, I ask for in writing of corporate matters. There they give you the whole brief, and both sides give you, so it's fine.
So it's essentially paperless. Otherwise, whatever documents they are relying on, and for you to understand as a mediator what the issues are at hand, you would like to peruse those documents and probably return it, because you don't intend
Yes.
to keep the documents for yourself. You may take notes and return it. That's how it will go, right?
Yes. So basically what happens is, you don't need the evidence, but you may need to see the document if, again, the message is conveyed to you the way the message is. Okay, so for example, there was this one case in which they told me that the contract has been partially terminated. So what it meant is, and I couldn't understand that, because there was a payment of fee for the contract, a certain amount that was agreed, an annual amount. And there was a dispute on that amount. It was for these towers for mobile cellular networks. So those towers, there was a piece of land where they were put, and one of those, or there were multiple towers, and some of those had stopped. That connection had stopped. That network they had stopped using, or something like that. So the contract had been terminated to that effect, those many towers. But they had not taken the towers out from that piece of land. They were still there, because these people had not allowed them access. So there was this whole thing. Now, when they communicate to you that it has been partially terminated, and parties don't agree on that fact, you need to read that document to understand what it means partially, because sometimes they can't explain. And even if they explain it from their perspective, their narrative. You should be able to read that document and see. Then you might need to read it, so that you can ask them questions and ask both parties questions. Ki, Are it has been terminated, you're still asking for the full amount. Why should they pay the full? Then what they'll say, they've been, they are still there. They're occupying the space, so they have to pay the full amount. And then you can explore that further. But if they tell you it has been partially terminated and you don't read the document, you don't understand it till you see the document, or whether what they're saying is actually what the document says. So it's things like that. That's when you ask for documents, but otherwise you don't need to see. It's not a court, no? You don't need to see the evidence to believe it. You have to understand the narrative and explore the narrative. Yeah, Rushali?
I wanted to understand if divorce cases also come for mediation. And if yes, how is it different from the counseling, compulsory counseling that is required to be done prior to giving a divorce decree?
So divorce, so the actual thing that happens in court is counseling is completely on the relationship part, understanding behavior and all of that. And the mediation part is just if it's a divorce, and generally it is a divorce mediation, you discuss the terms specifically, such as what are the terms of custody, what are the terms of co-parenting, what are the terms of the divorce in terms of how much amount has to be paid, maintenance, what it is, alimony, what it is. So those kind of specific things are discussed in a mediation. So mediation in that sense doesn't get too much into the emotion. This is what the court process describes. In private, we go a little more deeper. We don't go into relationship counseling, which basically is about, but relationships do happen or improve, or a little bit of that element comes in if you do your communication angle properly.
So you mean to say in the court annexed cases, when these matters come to mediation, the divorce decree is already passed. It's just the terms and conditions that are to be decided.
So Rushali, you have to understand that divorce is of two types. One is mutual consent and one is contested. When the divorce is contested, there's a lot of allegations and there are responses. Okay? Now that process can continue even for years, 5 years, 10 years. Sometimes it keeps continuing. So under section 89, when the judge finds that there is an element for settlement, he refers this to mediation. That means parties have reached a space where there is litigation fatigue, or there is a desperation for one of the parties to marry somebody else or something. And generally the court will feel this and know that one party is desperate, the other is dilly-dallying, and it's being done for money. It's only on this kind of elements that matter will be either settled through judicial settlement. That means the judge himself will give a proposal, or it will be settled by referring the matter to mediation. And over there, then your discussion boils down to just those terms, such as how will you co-parent? Or will you co-parent or not? Who will have the custody? What will be given for the child's maintenance or whatever? What will be the alimony that will be provided? Just figures, and those things are discussed and matter is closed. When parties come to a private mediator, they come because they want the terms discussed for filing mutual consent divorce. And in the case of the court, the matter is converted from a contested matter to a mutual consent divorce by filing mediated terms. And in private mediation, they know very well that if they don't have these terms ready, they have to go for contested divorce. And therefore, they come to the mediator to get these terms ready, that we have decided we don't want to stay together. We want a divorce, whatever our reasons, we want a divorce. But for that, filing that divorce, I need these 3 terms. I need to know how to co-parent, or what is the thing about custody of the child, alimony, maintenance. Unless I have these terms agreed, I can't file a no fault divorce. So I use the mediator to come to terms of just this much, and then file a mutual consent divorce. One lawyer is needed, just a maximum of 6 months, and I'm done.
So this in no way substitutes the counseling process.
No, generally you will not come to mediation for counseling. Parties are very clear. If I want to work on my relationship, I'll go for counseling. If I want to end my relationship, I will go to mediation. However, many times when parties come to you for mediation, it ends up being that they realize they don't want divorce, they want to stay together, they want to just have terms between, because you have been able to establish communication, not because you have told them that marriage is a great institution. They don't care. That is the difference that you need to understand. They will work on it if they feel like working on it, because you have been able to establish communication between them. If you tell them that marriage is an institution that needs to be saved, they will tell you, okay, fine, bye, goodbye, I'm going to another mediator. So that is that's the crux of it. Is that too much of law? I explained that to Roshali because Roshali is a qualified lawyer. So she may get the context. But otherwise, this is a little bit of technicality.
So just a general question, one more general question. Now that when we are looking at this medical healthcare mediation, in practice, how many number of cases, just an approximation, are related to healthcare currently?
So in my case, not too many, because I am primarily into family commercial. Some cases were referred, but we have Tanu will join us, who's mainly on the panel of medical disputes. And we still don't have enough coming for mediation, but that's why the industry needs to know about this process and do it. And Dr. Kapoor is working a lot in trying to do that. And I know that Tanu is on the panel, and that's why she's going to come in and explain that part. Also, when you're looking at healthcare, we tend to look at it only as doctor-patient dispute. But anyone who is into hospital management also understands that it's also an industry. There are suppliers, there are employees, there are a whole lot of things that's happening in the system. Everywhere in the industry, mediation is being used for workplace disputes, it's being used for commercial transactions, and it's being used for transactions such as negligence and things like that. So somehow when we look at healthcare, and that's why we've named it healthcare disputes, we keep thinking that it's only doctor patient, and that's why it's applicable for all kinds of commercial transactions. So even when Mr. Praveen wanted to join, the course is focusing on all kinds of things, because even in healthcare, it will not be just doctor-patient. That's one of the types of disputes. But there are other disputes that happen, which mediation is equally useful in. So
in hospital industries, we do tie-ups B2B. So there are corporates, there are wellness, there are third-party administrator agreements, there are insurance agreements, there are center agreements, there are lab-to-lab tie-up agreements, There are various type of agreements, and there's the hospital is a soft target for not payment by industries which have strong legal supports.
Yes.
So there are many agreements which are defaulted at many levels, and that leads to even the hospital not able to cash forward the payments to the vendors from whom they are purchasing, where we have the similar industry like purchases. So there also there is a lot of default. So patient hospital this disgrunts are very commonly known, but these background things I think lawyers who are practicing, they definitely know.
As far as I am concerned, I am least interested in the medical.
Yes. Yes.
Because I am purely interested in commercial, not interested very much in the matrimonial or family. My entire life has gone into commercial thing. So, and I have been practicing not knowingly what is the called mediation, but now I have to learn the skill so that I can do better.
Yes. But what I was explaining to Roshali is that the process remains the same. The comments that I'm giving you on how it's to be done remains the same. Only thing, I don't know if you were present at that time when I spoke about it, because you were on and off. There will be some disputes which will be very simple. For example, loans, those things. That time, don't think that you should go and dig. There's no point. That is a bargain. Literally offer will be there. You look at the thing. The point is there a relationship between the parties, or is it just a transactional relationship? If it is a long-term relationship, it makes sense to explore it further. If it is one transaction, that to a short-term transaction which is completely regulated, then you have only something to do, that is bargaining, nothing else.
Yeah, that happened many times, many cases in pre-COVID, whenever the loan was taken, small loan, personal loan or small business loan.
Yes.
Lot of default occurred and lot of either the borrower called us that कि हमारा settle करके दो, ये करके दो, वो करके दो.
उसमें कुछ स्कोप बहुत ज्यादा नहीं है एक्सप्लोर करने का.
No, that is, we can't charge also any fees, because suppose somebody has taken a 1 lakh rupee loan and he is not able to pay and running away and cannot do, and most of these banks or whatever the private lending institution have given unsecured loan, they can't do anything, and only they can spoil is their CIBIL score. And anyway, whatever has happened here.
Yes. So that those kind of cases very simple. No need of all this. What I'm saying, you always say why she's wasting our time. But those are not the cases that we are talking about. We are talking about like the example you gave on day one, where there's a family involved. There are 4 brothers, and everything has to.
The asset was of 400 crores.
Exactly. That is also, and also the relationship. At the end of it, you not only want to divide the assets equally, you also want to sustain the relationship because they are brothers. That is the kind of place where a lot of skill is required. Roshali?
Yeah, I have a question, one more question. Just going back to the healthcare industry, where currently we have ombudsman set up for the insurance related matters. Now, don't you think that ombudsman, the area of operation of ombudsman and that of the mediation is bit
overlaps? Absolutely. In fact, in your course, we are going to cover a whole section on ombudsman, which basically is the ombudsman requires skills of mediation. It's not the same thing, but yes, it does require skills of mediation. But a mediator can be appointed in several disputes, even when there is a ombudsman. And not all cases, like ombudsman, are only there in insurance, but there are so many other cases, right? So, but yes, skill set required is very close to that. So Roshali has a insurance background, so that's where her question is coming from.
Even in banking, I think there's an ombudsman.
Yes, there's an ombudsman in banking also.
Unfortunately, the decisions of the insurance ombudsman is binding only on the insurance company. That's how it works.
Yes, because in processes like this, you are not a judge. It's only a solution. But because you are literally like a representative or appointed by the insurance company kind of takes your decision. But the parties are not. You cannot impose it on them. Am I right, Rushali?
Yes, yes. And in fact, quite often it happens that, like in consumer court cases, it is usually said that the deep pocket suffers. Same thing is happening even in ombudsman.
Yes, and that's exactly what Dr. Rai also was talking about is, the hospital is looked at as a deep pocket. So there are a lot of claims for doctors, on hospitals and doctors, and almost bordering to harassment in that sense. And that of course is a matter of, not always you can resolve it in mediation, but knowing how to negotiate and actually standing by your stand, and being very strong on it is one of the areas that you can focus on.
We have had problems where foreigner dies in a hospital and the payment is to be covered by international insurance companies, and they have not even acknowledged, and the person dies. The body has to be handed over to the embassy and your payment is in the loop. And the amount somewhere varies from 50 to 60 lakhs.
Yes.
And I would want to use the word extortion because the way they ask doctors to pay, it's like extorting money. And it's terrible.
Yes. And that is one of the reasons why, having a, like, for example, if there's no mediator, and that's when the whole thing that came up, I told you the resistance for having lawyers there, because lawyers may not be in a position to understand what Dr. Deepa is talking about. I understand because I also have a little bit of knowledge from other angles, not as much as a practicing healthcare expert, but most lawyers may not understand this. And that's when that whole resistance came up, that, it becomes extortion. How do we ensure that it's somebody who understands our perspective? So yes, that's it from this session on communication. This only to set the tone. So as we go through the tools and the examples, we'll have a lot more clarity. We are focusing a little bit more on communication simply because it's the backbone of the whole process. Negotiation is, once you've been able to successfully get all the material in front of you and diffuse the tension and have the parties communicate to each other, then it's a little more easier.
Thank you. And with little examples, it really does help us to understand better. Thank you.
We'll try to add some more. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks a lot. Thanks to all participants also.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.